Well, welcome back, Pointer fans. We're here again with another segment of Wisdom Wednesday. And, we have had such a great cast of characters on. Listening last week to Dan Hauser, 7-time world champion as an executive, and his advice, and, going all the way back through our coaching staff. And today, I'm so lucky to be joined by who I would call a friend and a colleague who's been a mentor of mine since I came to Stevens Point 4 years ago. Our one of our founding wrestling fathers, if you want to call it that, Marty Loy. Marty, when you were here as our head coach from 87 to 98, put an impressive resume together. 128 wins, 5 conference championships. You had 34 conference champion individuals, 27 All-Americans, 3 national championships. Individuals, you had 7 times you were a top 10 in the nation. You were coach of the year 6 times. You were national finalist of coach of the year 3 times. Entered into the NCAA Division III Wrestling Coaches Hall of Fame in 2007. An unbelievable coaching career. And since then, you've moved on, and you are now currently our Dean of the College of Professional Studies, which again works so integrated with athletics, and we're happy to certainly lucky to have you as a partner. And I would be remiss not to also, through this introduction, because I'm going to ask you a question about this, co-founded Camp Hope with your wife Becky, who I've had a chance to play in some of the golf outing fundraisers, and an unbelievable full-time side job, if you want to call it that, but the impact that you've made to many. So Marty, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Brad. Can I have you introduce me every time I go do something? Wow.
Well, it's pretty easy when you have that kind of impressive background and career. And, Marty, I know you're busy with all that's going on and the changes that have happened, but we're lucky to have you, and we're still, we still have you here at Stevens Point as our dean, and friend and close colleague. And Marty, I did my research, as I often do for this show, and now our fans and our student athletes know that I have a basketball background, and as I was kind of digging through some things, it sounds like you started down the track of being a basketball player. Is there some truth to
that? Oh my God, I don't know where you heard that, but you are digging way back. Yes, when I didn't wrestle until I was a freshman in high school. And until then I was a basketball player. And I don't pit me against Jack Bennett on this, but I was a damn good basketball player in the junior high.
Yeah.
And I was recruited I actually recruited in high school. We had a wrestling coach who really I've emulated for many years and learned a lot from, but he was a first national champion wrestler at Wisconsin. And he came and was a physical education teacher at my high school, in River Valley High School. And he actually identified the best athletes and recruited them. And he got me out of a math class, which I hated math. And he recruited me to wrestle, and it ticked the basketball coaches off a lot that he did that. And he did that, but he built in a very short period of time at River Valley, we built one of the best wrestling programs in any division in the state, at that time. And I did switch then from basketball to wrestling. I was power forward or a forward?
Yeah.
And I was tough. And I wasn't going to finesse anybody, but I had these huge elbows that I could read I was really gritty under the board. And but I still miss basketball. I played a lot of basketball. Side story, I don't know if you know this, but Shirley Agner, when I was coaching wrestling, and Shirley was young. We were both young coaches, and she was a young women's basketball coach here at UW Stevens Point. She still is there. But in the winter, in the dog days of the winter, in these winter sports, you need something to spice it up a little bit. And so she would let our wrestling team come and play the women's basketball team in basketball for a practice during practice night. And it was fantastic. She said, just don't be too rough under there. we'll let this continue. And we did. And they always beat us. And it was, we always tried our hardest, but those women basketballers always beat us, but not by much, not by much. We did pretty well.
We're lucky that wrestling was your passion, and you know, it led you in quite a remarkable career. Ended up at Wisconsin, following what sounds like your mentor, who was a Badger and wrestled for the Badgers. Talk to us a little bit about your experiences as a student athlete, and what it was like to be a student athlete and
Into what? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
And a Big Ten student athlete.
Yeah. Well, it was different then than it is now. I have to tell you that. 30 years have changed a lot. I've gone back several times, and the most recent times I've gone back to Wisconsin for, you know, they have alumni things, and I a lot of my old teammates are there, and we get together and chat. But you know, you go down there now, and the facilities and the support structures for those athletes and everything, it's more than the Green Bay Packers have. I mean, it's unbelievable. And we had some special things, but it wasn't anything like it is today. But it you know, it taught me a lot. You know, I was a good wrestler in high school. You know, I had a partial scholarship you know, for wrestling. I ended up being the varsity 190 pounder for most of my time there. I moved to heavyweight for a little while to help the team, but mostly at 190. And when I was a freshman, I was no good. I mean, when the equipment manager gave out equipment, you know, the better guys got these nice big red Wisconsin duffel bags. Mm-hmm. And then when they ran out of those, they gave these white bags, and we called those the turd bags. So I was getting the turd bag when I was a freshman at Madison. And it's one of the things I learned is that if you step in over your head, if you get in over your head, you'll swim to the top. And pretty soon you'll be backstroking, you know, across the pond, right? Because, and so going to Madison allowed me to step in way over my head and work my way and learn and listen and learn and work hard. And all of a sudden, one day, all of a sudden you find yourself, you know, wrestling for the Badgers. It was fantastic experience all the way around. And those are back in the days. And, you know, when one of my claim to fame is riding in Elroy's van. So we had a fundraiser out at the Kelsher Farms, and they'd have the wrestling and the hockey team out there, because he was Jim Kelsher was a big wrestling and hockey fan, and we'd go out there, and wrestling coach at the time, Russ Erickson, threw the keys to all of us wrestlers and to Elroy's van because we had no transportation out to Kelsher's farm. And so you've been to college, you can imagine the night we had in Elroy's van. I'll tell you those stories some other time.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. Yeah, some other time.
Elroy versus van. Yeah, wow.
Well, you know, that obviously led you through into Merrill High School and then up here to Point, and you know, obviously had a tremendous run here with our wrestling program, finishing third in the country and just doing some amazing things. You know, talk to us a little bit about some of your most memorable moments as the Point head coach, and, you know, what Point wrestling meant to you in your career when you got started.
Yeah, I mean, it was everything. You asked earlier, you introduced me as the dean of the college. People ask me, you know, if I miss wrestling. I still feel like a coach. Mm-hmm. And I've been out of it for 25 years almost. And I still identify as a coach. And I quite frankly, I still see people downtown who don't follow sports very much, but they knew at some point I was the coach. They go, "Hey, coach, how are you going to do this year?" And I just say, "Oh, we'll do pretty well. We're pretty good," because, you know, they don't know. I'm not going to go back into that, but it's great. I loved it. It was you know, more than, and if you think about it, more than competing, more than faculty, more than dean, that's how I identify. So yeah, it was instrumental a period of my life, and it's mostly because of the people I was around. Mm-hmm. I mean, my coaching was a compilation of so many people, so many good coaches in my history. And I had some of the best in the world, actually, through college. And then I remember my first office was with Rick Witt.
Yeah.
And Rick Witt, so I'm 24 years old. I get the head coaching job at Stevens Point. And they put me in an office. I share an office with Rick Witt. I know nothing. I called my own college coach from my desk, the first call I made, and I said, Dwayne Clevin, he was one of my college coaches, and I know he had recommended me for the job. And I said, Dwayne, I'm just calling to say thank you for this job. But I also have to tell you, I don't know what in the heck I'm doing. He just said, oh, you'll learn, hang in there. And I hung up the phone, and then I watched Rick Witt. And Rick Witt had a Rolodex. He was recruiting from his Rolodex. And so I knew technique. I did clinics as a Badger wrestler all the time. I mean, I knew that, but I didn't know recruiting. And Rick Witt taught me how to recruit. And so I was with him for a year or two, and then they moved me in with Sheila Mish. And I learned, again, another great one that I learned from her. And then, I was lucky enough to be surrounded by some phenomenal assistant coaches. I mean, and think about this. Tom Jalio was my first assistant coach. And Tom Jalio is the AD at Syracuse University, has been there for 10 plus years and been an AD other places. Great person, just very successful person. And then it was Terry Manning. Terry got his degree in communication here and was working his way through the markets. He was a news anchor, doing a great job. And now he's in Pulaski came back and wanted to settle in with his family and became a guidance counselor and is doing a great work there. Brett Penninger, entrepreneur, worked for USA Wrestling, owns a, very, very large and successful, business. Walt Veering, who's out in environmental engineering firm, is a leader in that firm out in, Boise, Idaho. Eric Burke, who was a wrestler, but was such a great person. He was a principal at Port Washington. He just became the superintendent at Rhinelander. I mean, these were, and I know I'm missing some of them, but these were guys that just sort of came together and we all sort of worked together, and and they were all young in their careers and just the most outstanding people ever want to be around. And so I just facilitate. Don't call me a facilitator. I mean, we were all the coach and we were all invested and we loved the kids and we tried to do what we did for the right reasons for the kids, and what happened blossomed. That's all I can tell you. It just blossomed. So, yeah.
Well, like we often say, if I don't get in your way, we're going to do great things, right? I mean, that's what good leaders say. If I don't get in your way, we're going to do great things.
Absolutely. And they would all say I got in the way way too much.
Well, as you kind of look back and you have an interesting perspective as a student athlete, as a head coach, as a high school coach, as a head coach, mm-hmm. as somebody who worked their way through academia and now into a dean. And, mm-hmm. A part of this segment, while we started this to bring back memories and reconnect with our history, part of this is also talking about the present, and where we are today. And, how do you see athletics? We're in one of the most unprecedented times in all of our lives, right? Going on with COVID-19 and what seems to be a slow-moving, fast-paced change, right? Everything seems to drag, but then changing. How do you think athletics helps our students, certainly helped you, maybe me, adapt to an ever-changing, unique world? How does athletics play in this today?
Yeah, and before I do that, I knew I was going to forget somebody, and I'm probably going to forget more, but Johnny Johnson, my God, he became the head coach here. He was an Olympic alternate. He was coaching at Minnesota. So, I mean, he fits right in with that whole great group.
That's the next question. So that's good.
Is it? Okay. So how do you translate coaching into life?
Well, how is athletics helping with this unprecedented time, and handling the adversity and the change and the things that come along with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, every coach will tell you that athletics is a microcosm of life, and especially in wrestling, where it's whatever, mano a mano, one on one here, and when you lose, you can't point to anybody. You lost the match, and every coach, I don't care how good you were, you've lost critical times, and the best coaches will tell you that they never forget those times when they lost, right? I mean, those stick right in your craw. You still dream about them. I still dream about them. But the ups and downs and the in coaching and in athletics, you persist. I mean, that's how you win. You work hard, you do the right things for the right reasons, and you persist. And you will lose. And when you do, you get right back on your feet and you figure it out. And there's nobody there to blame. It's you. And so, yeah, when you're dealing with something, you own it. Yeah. And when it doesn't go well, you get yourself back up. I remember we should have won the first conference championship. We should have won. We didn't. And we were better than everybody else, beat everybody else in the dual meets, but I'll be damned if Whitewater didn't come in. And we had a couple of problems, and I don't know, a few years after I was coaching, and we had built the team, we were ready to win, we didn't. I remember on the bus just thinking, I'm just not cut out for this. I think it's time I quit. I think, and then coming in the hallway, and you walk down and you see a guy like Mark Mazzolini, who just won the national title, and I'm like, head down. I just wanted to sneak my way into my office and pretend but then you think about it and you go, okay, what could have I done different? What should I do next? Where should we go from here? How do I address my team? It's not about me, it's about them and how they're feeling. And if my head is down, what is that going to result in? And so, so you learn what's important. You learn about, as I said, it's a microcosm of life. And so when something like whatever happens, COVID, you learn to step back, analyze the situation, take it in stride, try to take the long view of this, try to put it in perspective, and then work your way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you had mentioned Johnny. Certainly for those of our fans that take a second should research Johnny's career as a wrestler. I mean, literally one of the best in his weight class in the world, and kind of stuck behind one of the best in the world, as an American wrestler. But Johnny worked for you. So if you go back in our legacy between Coach Johnson and Coach Loy, we've had two coaches for a long period of time. I mean, and unbelievable stability and what we've done here in wrestling. So I would assume Coach Johnson is very similar, having come off the Marty Loy coaching tree. But when you were recruiting, there are a lot of talented young men and women out there that play the sports that they play. But we all know that putting together a championship environment is more than talent. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that you looked for then, and maybe even now in young people, when you say, yeah, that's somebody that's got it. And I really want that person to be around us.
Yeah. And we had our best success. I mean, we recruited a lot of state champions, no doubt. In fact, we recruited several 3-time state champions. A couple of those came and never stepped on the mat. Right. We had I can point to a lot of kids who were really good, but they were in the tough regional. And they could have been a state place winner with high school talent, but they were in the wrong region, and 2 people went on and they did not. And so when you find those, that's a gem. That is a gem. I'm trying to think of an example of one. Joe Renz. Joe Renz was a 2-time All-American for us. Joe Renz lost in the regional semifinals. The 2 people that went on to state were 1 and 2 in the state that year, and Joe Renz was right in there with them. And we found Joe, and he came here. And so it's individualistic, but you look for those kids who have something at Division III. Yeah, you want the Division I guy, Colin Green. He was visiting us in Madison. He was a three-timer. He hadn't lost in 2 years, and by God, he chose us. And when he did, I remember in the backyard talking to his dad, who told me he was coming to Point, and I dropped the phone and jumped up and down. I was just, because he was somebody you were going to build around, because he was a Division I guy who chose to go to UW Stevens Point, right? Well, you have to have some of those, but you got to find those other ones who really want to work hard, and you can develop them into really good talent. And then there's the occasional guy. We had a heavyweight, Dennis Opperly, who ended up being an All-American for us as well. And Dennis was a house of a man. I remember I never knew him from Adam. Nobody identified him on the recruiting list. I'm sitting in my office one day in the spring of the year, and he knocked on the door and walked in. And I looked at him, and he was a house of a man. Oh my God. And he goes, I'd like to wrestle here. And I said, how'd you do in high school? He goes, I did okay, not great. And I go, are you a football player? And he goes, no, I just want to wrestle. And I'm like, if I can't make a man that looks like that into a good wrestler, I've got a problem. And so we signed him up like that day. And sure enough, he ends up being an All-American heavyweight for us.
You might want to go back to basketball if you can't make that.
So we have stories all around like that. You got to keep your eyes open, and I think you don't just discount anyone, quite frankly.
Well, our fans are going to recognize these four names. And, having been an import to Stevens Point, one of the things that one of, my mentors and somebody I look up to is Frank O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
Got here, Frank said, Brad, there's a few things you need to do. And one of them is a golf outing here in August. And, four of you who are, a Mount Rushmore of Stevens Point: Marty Loy, Fred Hebert, Frank O'Brien, John Jury. If you've been to Point anytime in the last 40 years, you know those names, right? Those are, well, the four of you, and really led Fred and you kind of co-chair. I went to a golf outing, and I went year one because Frank said, Brad, you need to go. I didn't know anything else, but you need to go. So I went. And I left that day saying, this is the best 6 hours I've spent in years. And that's Camp Hope. And now I didn't go to Camp Hope. It's the fundraiser for Camp Hope, but you hear the stories. Marty, it's an unbelievable organization that you guys have put together and kind of grassrooted and changed lives. Tell our fans, because I would bet that some of our fans aren't quite aware of exactly what Camp Hope is and what all that means.
Yeah, Camp Hope's a camp for grieving children, and it was started because of a daughter that we had that was stillborn. In fact, there's a wrestling story there. Becky was 9.5 months pregnant, and I was heading to Oshkosh for the conference tournament, and I get a call. I was waiting. I mean, I had an extra, brought my car along in case we were going to have our baby. And I get a call from I got paged, and the athletic director there say, yeah, your wife called you. You got to go to Stevens Point, and I did. And I showed up at the hospital and found out that our daughter was stillborn, and that was incredibly hard for us. The wrestling team was there like you wouldn't believe. They, when you're coaching, they're part of your family in many ways. They all babysat my kids. They all fished on, out behind our house in the pond. They all had bonfires out there, knew Becky and our kids really, really well. And so we kind of went through that together. But in healing from that, we needed to find something to do, something. And at the time, Becky's brother-in-law saw a camp, and a lady in Iowa who ran a company, a nonprofit, Amanda the Panda. She worked with cancer patients, and after the cancer, sometimes when they would die, she would hold a camping experience for the siblings. And so that was it. I knew camping. My wife was really passionate, and I knew how to do wrestling camps. It's like, we can do this. We can run a camp. And so we started Camp Hope, 35 years, just under 35 years ago now. And it has gone really well ever since. Standalone nonprofit. We've served tens of thousands of children and now adults through the adult camp. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful cause. I've met some of the most wonderful people who, can you imagine donating everything's volunteer. It's all free for the children. It's all fundraised so that it can be free for the children. And can you imagine, and we get counselors that drive up from Chicago or wherever, Minnesota, all over the state of Wisconsin to be counselors consistently. And so can you imagine giving up your whole weekend for a grieving camp? And they do, and those kinds of people are just special. And so it's been wonderful. It's been my life's work and passion. I call myself her biggest volunteer, and she's done a really great job, and we've all been affected by it. The reason you're there, the reason Frank, I don't know if I've gotten you out there to be a counselor. I'm going to do that. But Frank and Fred have both been counselors and have experienced being with the kids. You're changed when you go. The first camp we ran, I just remember it's a camp. It's fun. It's an intermix of difficult things and fun things. And there's a candlelight ceremony where people share a memory of their loved one. And I just remember just sobbing, hearing these young children, tell about their experiences, and it's powerful and it's healing, and it's been just really good. So there you go.
Yeah, well, when I used to coach, I used to say to our team a lot, adversity reveals character at the highest level. And, seeing what you and your family, and if for our people who haven't been involved with Camp Hope, I'd highly encourage you to find ways, come to the golf outing, do anything you can. If you have a little bit to donate it, because it is, I haven't left, and this is just the golf outing. I haven't left the golf outing and not being in tears. You're making a difference. And Marty, you are somebody who doesn't like a lot of credit, and I'm glad that we're able to give you a little bit of this. We are in a lot of ways who we are because of who you are and who your teams have been. The influence, we still are influenced. You were a coach, then athletics reported to you, and our head wrestling coach is still part of you. And a lot of our student athletes are part of your college. And you are always a teammate and a mentor and a colleague to ours. And we appreciate all that you are and all that you mean to Pointer Athletics, Marty. And thank you for coming on. And as we always do, we leave the parting words. Now, if you know Marty, for those of you fans that know Marty, he said this is more of a wise guy Wednesday than a wisdom Wednesday. Come on, you're one of the smartest guys I've been around and a good friend. So I'm going to leave the parting words of Wisdom Wednesday with you, Marty. Anything you want to say to our fans?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me on, by the way. And you've been just a pleasure to work with. I love athletics. I'm so glad that they have you at the helm. So I because it was Wise Guy Wednesday, I try to think of some words of wisdom and try to think of just a few things, maybe if there's student athletes watching. It's what I would tell. One of my things I miss the most about being a coach is sitting after practice, you're all drenched in sweat, and we're all sitting in a circle or kind of half laying there talking and sharing and talking about life and helping our wrestlers with their problems and solve things and whatnot. And so I'm like, what would I say to them? What would be the message? And so I was thinking about a few things. First thing, keep getting in over your head. I think I mentioned that earlier. You'll swim to the surface, and pretty soon you'll be, doing the backstroke. And so just don't be afraid to step in over your head. Challenge yourself. And the second one we talked about too, persist. You work hard. You'll work really hard. You'll deserve to win, and you won't win. And that's when you got to get back up and persist. The third thing is you help get what you want by helping other people get what they want. I went to, and people have to look this up, look up Zig Ziglar. My wrestling coach in college, one of my wrestling coaches took me to a Zig Ziglar meeting at one point when I was a senior in college, and that's what he said to everybody, and it stuck. And it makes so much sense. And I look back at every, when you're working to try to make your wrestlers really good, you're working for them, all of a sudden good things happen to you. And when you're trying to help a student in classroom, all of a sudden good things happen. And when you're trying to, just that's my advice to them would be help other people, and good things will happen to you. It's not about the championships, it's about the process, and enjoy the process that you're in. And that's the last thing I say is lift your head out of the moment. This goes to the COVID crisis, and we're in a crisis. We have to work. We need to lift our heads out of that moment and out of the circumstance or out of the crisis or out of the goal for the moment to see the big picture. If you do, you'll have the perspective to find the calmness and the wisdom and the confidence and a solution, and your focus will be on something bigger than you, and then things will work out okay. And you can apply that when you're a student athlete. It's easy to say, I really want to party or whatever it is. I mean, in the moment, be in the moment. But if you step back and go, what's my ultimate goal? What do I want to accomplish? How do I look at down the road a while? All of a sudden, your decision making becomes much better, and it's in every phase of your life to do that. So those are my best 5 pieces of advice passed on probably from 10 other people over the years, but I'm happy to pass it on to whatever, especially any athletes that might be watching your Wisdom Wednesdays.
Well, thank you, Marty. We appreciate it. I was indoctrinated into Stevens Point Athletics Day 3, playing golf with you and Fred Hebert and Frank O'Brien. Had no idea what I was getting myself into. I left there 6 hours later, a smarter, better, funnier, laughed a lot guy. So
yes, it worked then. That was the purpose of that meeting. It was to indoctrinate you, Brad Duckworth.
Yeah, well, I got it. I got it full-fledged that day. Well, my friend, thank you. And the Pointer fans, thank you. We'll be back next Wednesday. We've got another exciting segment coming next Wednesday and Message Monday. Look for us next week. Thanks again, Dr. Loy. We appreciate having you. And we'll see you all next week.
Great. Thank you.